For so many years now, the agenda of green energy has continued to thrive. However, all that we know to be green energy did not start recently, but, in fact, has been in existence since the early 19th century. Many of these, such as using the energy from the wind, was used in those times for mere and simple tasks like pumping water. However, today the amount of energy needed is a lot more than before, and with the intense argument of completely taking out the use of fossil fuels in our world today, there is a need to bring back what used to be, harnessing power from nature. Welcome back to the Prometheus Network. In today's video, we will be taking you on a quick ride to and fro, starting from how this all began and what is in store for us in the nearest future. So make sure you stick around till the end so you don't miss out on any bit of information. Without further ado, let's get started. As we already established earlier, the vision of using natural resources as energy providers started a long time ago, not as though they were aware of how much of an impact it will have generations after. Millennials opened their minds to making use of wind for sailing their ships and streaming the power mills. However, as the 19th century began to roll in, humans opened their homes to harness wind, water, and sunlight for the generation of electricity. And ever since then, several events have continued to follow as renewable energy underwent evolution. All of these began in 1839 when the French physicist Alexander Edmond Becquerel discovered that electric currents are produced when light hits metal electrodes in an electrolyte solution. Following this discovery was the 1882 hydroelectric central power station, which was the very first in North America to use Edison equipment. It began operations just along the Fox River in Appleton, Wis. This was the beginning of the hydroelectric era. And then later, in the winter season of 1887 to 1888, Charles F. Brush pioneered the construction of what is presently known to be the first automatic operating wind turbine for the purpose of generating electricity. This was literally the world's largest turbine, which ran for about 20 years. The battery of this turbine is charged in the cellar of Brush's mansion. This meant that regardless of how huge the turbine was, its generator was simply a 12-kilowatt model. As the years went by, there continued to be more advanced, and in 1933, the Tennessee Valley Authority Act was signed, and this created a public corporation that, in part, was responsible for generating hydroelectric power. Today, the TVA provides electricity for over 153 local power companies that serve over 10 million individuals. There had been the establishment of wind turbines and hydropower. Next on the list was solar, and in 1954, Bell Labs went ahead and demonstrated the very first practical solar cell that made use of silicon in converting sunlight to electricity in Murray Hill, New Jersey. This demonstration was based on the discovery we mentioned earlier that was made by the French physicist Alexander Edmond Becquerel in 1839. This practical was demonstrated by using the solar panel to power a small toy Ferris wheel and another solar-powered radio transmitter. These particular and initial silicon solar cells were about 6% efficient in converting the energy obtained from sunlight into electrical energy. Compared to the other solar cells that had come before this, the silicon solar cell was a huge improvement. And according to the New York Times, this was the beginning of a new era. By 1966, more developments were made, and that birthed the world's very first power plant that generated electricity with the use of tides, and this started functioning in Brittany, France. And over 30 years later, after the silicon solar cell demonstration by Bell's Laboratories, in 1982, the U.S. Department of Energy and Utilities launched the Solar One in California. And this was aimed at demonstrating power tower systems where mirrors were placed to concentrate on the sun's rays simply to create electricity through steam turbines. And by 2012, a major milestone was hit with the opening of the Three Gorges Dam in China as the largest hydropower plant in the world, with a generating capacity of about 22,500 megawatts. Later in 2015, the opening of Solar Star in California was regarded as one of the highest output U.S. solar panel farms. The year 2020 was another milestone that welcomed the 1,200 megawatt Hornsea 1 entirely going online in the UK as the largest offshore wind farm in the world. Now, with a significant number of wind turbines and solar panels spreading out across the entire globe, we are, for a fact, rest assured that clean energy is drastically taking over fossil fuels. But while it is very much evident that solar and wind power are growing at a fast rate, the future still stands to be a basis of argument. However, aside from the opinion of many people out there, the numbers they say don't lie, and based on those numbers, it is clear that about 26% of the electricity in our world today centers around green energy, and according to the International Energy Agency, these numbers are expected to go up to about 30% by the year 2024. These predictions show an increase in the world's solar capacity to grow by 600 gigawatts in the future, which presently is about twice the total electricity capacity in Japan. Altogether, green energy is expected to grow by about 1,200 gigawatts by the year 2024, which is equal to the entire electricity capacity of the US. Another thing that will be very much expected in the near future will be the doubling in solar installations in the US to about 4 million or more by the year 2023. And all of this will be a result of the fall in prices for the installation of these panels. These declines in prices began in 2018 as the cost of solar PV-based power took a considerable decline by 13%. According to reports from the IEA, it was discovered that in the near future, solar energy would provide 60% of the predicted green energy growth simply due to how accessible it is. Looking at the past 6-year period, solar energy has expanded to over double its original size. And even with this level of expansion in the near future, there are hopes of the cost of solar power declining by about 15% to 16%, leading to even more growth in the second half of the decade. But aside from just the cost of solar energy dropping, the capacity of solar energy in the future is another thing that should be anticipated. Now, unlike wind and hydropower, in most cases, none require specific locations to be utilized appropriately. The case is quite different for solar as it offers more freedom. And apart from the fact that it doesn't require a particular location, the rising and setting of the sun are always on a predictable schedule, unlike water or wind, which is quite variable. That said, it is expected that solar power will expand from 58 gigawatts in 2018 to a huge 142 gigawatts in the space of 4 years, alongside the annual capacity, which is expected to grow to over 20 gigawatts by the year 2024. Then there is the fact that solar facilities will go ahead to reduce their rates of variability by simply storing the electricity from the day and running on the stored energy at night. And on the other hand, more advanced solar plants will begin to operate on higher DC to AC ratios. This simply implies that they will be delivering a more consistent service for much longer durations. Even in times of low sunlight, the residential and commercial buildings will continue to run at their full capacity. And once all of the necessary gaps between electricity generation and sunlight collection have been closed, we will have more residents and corporations joining the solar movement and the green energy movement at large. This would make it entirely inevitable for governments around the world to apply incentive and remuneration schemes alongside regulation policies that are effective. A good example will be the case of what occurred in California, where the installation of solar panels on new homes and buildings with 3 stories became mandatory after 2020. All of this is the future of solar energy, but aside from that, what does the future hold for wind or water? As for onshore wind energy capacity, there are predictions that there will be an increase of 57% to 850 gigawatts by the year 2024. Due to this increased capacity, the adoption of wind power became renowned. Even more, Japan is currently experimenting with the idea of installing offshore turbines as a replacement for many of its nuclear reactors, which is a result of the country's 2011 nuclear disaster in Fukushima. The company Marubeni currently signed a project agreement to construct offshore farms in northern Japan, with each farm having the ability to produce a maximum of 140 megawatt of power. The Japanese port and harbor law has also been revised to stimulate wind turbine construction in affected areas and locations that are favorable to wind turbines. But as for a faster expansion of wind energy globally, the key will remain grid integration, financing, and social acceptance. And finally, with hydropower, the IEA believes that it will remain the world's major source of green energy in 2024. The capacity, however, is set to increase by 9%, which is about 121 gigawatt over that predicted period, and this will be led by China, India, and Brazil. In the upcoming decades, it is expected that green energy will continue to rise, ultimately taking out fossil fuels and for sure reducing greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere, thereby leading to climate change. With all of this, it is quite certain that life will be a lot better with clean energy, keeping not just the atmosphere safe but also humans in general. That said, we have come to the end of this video. Do make sure to give it a like if you enjoyed the video, and let us know in the comment section down below your thoughts on green energy and what more you would love to see. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new around here and ring that bell notification on the side so you don't miss any more uploads. Thank you very much for watching.